Hello and welcome to the first episode of Three On Lights Out. We have three hosts.
Woo-hoo-hoo!
You got Kilroy, you got John, and you got Mongo. If this seems familiar, you're wrong. This has never happened before. I've never met these two people. This is entirely happenstance. We did not do a previous show for another channel. That never happened, and you cannot prove otherwise. There's not links on the internet that show otherwise, not in the least bit.
Nope, never happened.
All right. So we are back. Well, us three are back together to bring to you people baseball again, because we know we got John right over here. This guy, fantastic baseball knowledge. We got Mongo, decent baseball knowledge. And you got me, the guy who really doesn't know much about baseball, but does enjoy talking.
He's not wrong. Everything there is true so far.
So we're kicking off the inaugural episode with the baseball trade deadline.
Let's
We got winners, we got losers, and then we got a spicy one.
and we got everybody else.
So we'll kick things off with John. Give us your winner.
So one of the winners I have are the Yankees. They needed a bat and they traded for Jazz Chisholm. They didn't give up much. They gave up a catcher and then two other prospects. And then they got Mark Leiter Jr. They gave up an infielder and a right-handed pitcher who was decent in the minors and could be up with the Cubs. They needed bullpen help. They got it. They really needed bullpen help, and they got a guy who's very good against lefties and righties this year. The ERA shows that it's not good, but if you look at his other stats, like his expected ERA, it's in the twos. His strikeout rate is up in the 50% right now. I think it's one of the perfect people. And then Jazz Chisholm, he's been on a bad Marlins teams for the past however long he's been in the league. They've been to the playoffs once. Taking him out of that and putting him into Yankee Stadium, it will really boost his confidence up, and he'll be better. The first 4 games he's played, he's looked fantastic at third base. So that's one of my winners right now.
I love that choice. I think that's a great choice. I also think Jazz Chisholm is he screams New Yorker. I mean, the dude has attitude. He belongs. He wants to play for a contender, clearly. He belongs in a major city. He definitely doesn't belong on the beach somewhere. I'm with you, John. That's a great one.
I heard, I don't remember from where, but I heard somewhere a good comparison is, and not necessarily to his talent or his play style, but comparison into tons and tons of talent. Didn't always produce on the team that he was with initially, and will most likely produce and just be a big pick for the Yankees. I heard similar vibes to like when the Yankees acquired Paul O'Neill.
Totally different players, but definitely the same idea. Someone who can come in, definitely command the locker room, definitely be a bat you can rely on. Again, all those guys who the Yankees had on that 90s team, the story is, they all gave way more than the Yankees ever expected, whether it was Paul O'Neill, who was a known very good player and became now literally number retired, or someone like Scott Brocious, who literally came out of nowhere and became, a household name in New York. So, I mean, it has a lot to do with, can the team develop them? Can the team use them correctly? And he obviously is the first domino to then, can they figure out how to use, DJ LeMahieu correctly? Can Gleyber Torres shut up for 5 minutes so we can just put up with him until we can finally get rid of him? That's the real winner, by the way, John, even more than the Yankees, Yankee fans. By Gleyber Torres showing his true colors and demanding that he'll only play second base, good. See ya, buddy. Go play second base for another team next year. I'm so sick of that kid.
Right after that comment, he made 2 errors in the very next game at second base.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
That is very, very funny. So I mean, it was all around. It seemed like it was seems like the Yankees had a solid trade deadline. They at first it seemed like they were going to potentially be quiet, and then they made their moves, and it seems to be paying off so far. Obviously, it's early on, but the dividends are there, and we will continue to see what happens as the season progresses.
There was a little bit of concern when they went out and got J.D. Davis. That was the red. I texted you two sarcastically. Oh, good, we got. Was everyone safe? Everyone relax. We got him. And so you thought that they were going to plug him in. It's nice to see that they unloaded J.D. Davis. They unloaded Jones in the outfield there, and they made room for these guys because it really. You're right, Kilroy. It looked like they were going to make a run with what they had, and it wasn't enough. They were clearly a bat short, and they solved that problem.
So hopefully this will end a billion-year drought that it feels like for Yankees. Hence, high expectations. Mongo,
yes.
Tell us your winner.
Oh, it's episode 1. Let's piss off Dodger fans already with a controversial take here. When you look at last year, who managed to make a run at the World Series, I don't know if I fully believe buyers can be treated with 100% respect anymore at the deadline. I think it's easier to be a winning seller than a winning buyer because nothing's guaranteed in the MLB playoffs anymore. Yeah, John, you know where I'm going with this. It's the ultimate seller, baby. The Marlins are your absolute winner of this deadline. I've not seen a fire sale like this in a while. MLB.com ranked the prospects that were sold at the deadline. The Marlins got 4, according to MLB.com, the Marlins got 4 of the best 8 prospects that were moved at the deadline, 6 of the top 16, and for themselves, complete replenish of their top 12 now. 7 came over in the deadline, and one of the other 5 is Dylan Head, who came over in the Arais trade earlier in the year, John's boy. So this is a complete overhaul. I absolutely love it. Godspeed if you're trying to guess which Marlin reliever you should go for saves in a fantasy baseball league. It's going to be a rough couple months, but well done, Marlins. A team I really hated on them lately for how they handled their front office the last couple years. But this was a win for the Marlins for sure.
Well, yeah, that's good. That's good. Now, what's your take on? And this is just me trying to flesh things out a bit. What's your take on the fact that the Marlins are again moving on from a young, very talented player? They keep having these young, talented players, and then they just ship them off. Do you think that this is that? What do you think of that? What do you think is going to come from that? I mean, obviously, this is just the franchise has always done that since its existence, pretty much. But do you think it's good or bad for baseball?
Well, so the Marlins, they have one of the Rays guys. They brought in someone who worked with the Rays, and the Rays are very known to selling off their best players or their players on expiring contracts because they don't like to pay people. They did it with Zach Eflin this year. I think it's not bad because the prospects they got are very exciting. I picked up one of these prospects that got traded in a fantasy dynasty league because he was great. I mean, they won this deadline by a landslide. They traded away Tanner Scott, and they got a haul back. I don't know what's going on with the Padres, but they don't care about their prospects. They sold their number 2 prospect, number 6, number 9, and then another top 20 guy for Tanner Scott, who's a rental, by the way. He's probably not even going to be there next year. When they traded away AJ Puck, they got Davison, De Los Santos, and Andrew Painter from the Diamondbacks. They did it perfectly. They got the prospect they should have gotten. Well, maybe not for Tanner Scott, of course, for half of the year. But they won this by a landslide, so I don't feel like it's too bad. And Marlins fans got to be happy with what they got in return.
Yeah, for sure. I think the reason I'm not totally mad at the Marlins for ruining baseball again here is because it starts with the Luis Arraez trade. When they put him out there, it becomes very clear nothing on this current roster, A, is safe, and B, is going to particularly be in its prime when they're ready to go again. That if I'm going to kind of change the question on you, which is if Jazz Chisholm was the white flag of the year for the Marlins, I have more of a problem with it. It wasn't. He's just he's just the debris sinking into the ocean after the white flag already went up at the Arraez trade, right? And so that's why I'm not necessarily that mad about it. Also, by all accounts, Chisholm was not the happiest dude in Miami. He was not the easiest dude to get along with. And so, there was probably even less of a chance of him particularly ever wanting to be a lifelong Marlin than some of the other younger guys they might have moved. But John otherwise nailed it. It was a complete fire sale. No one's safe. They did a great job with the prospects they brought in, and it's very clear that the next time they're successful, they don't plan on having many of these current bats on this team. They got a nice young – it's injured right now, but they got a nice young pitching staff to work around. They're going to have some nice young bats coming up. John, you beat me to De Los Santos in our Dynasty League, and bravo, because that's a stud waiting to happen in the middle of this lineup.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on to some losers. John, why don't you kick us off with your loser? Not that you are one.
So I kind of went to a team that's in first place in their division right now. I went to the Astros. They got Yusei Kikuchi and Caleb Ferguson from the Yankees, and then Yusei Kikuchi from the Blue Jays. They gave up a lot for just a half of year for Yusei Kikuchi. They gave up Jake Bloss, which is number 9 in their prospect. They gave up Will Wagner for number 13 and Joey Lofredito. I think this is way too much for the Astros to give up for a rental like this. I know their pitching staff is hurt, but I don't like how much they gave up for him.
I'm with John completely on this one, especially when you factor in, I don't have the Mariners as a strong enough winner to have them in this show, but I definitely have the Mariners closer to a winner than a loser. Arozarena there, and the reliever from Toronto, great ads. So if you're Houston, you got to at least be thinking, I'm going punch for punch with this team. I got to at least be as good as the Mariners at this deadline, and they weren't even remotely close. Some of these divisions like I thought the Royals, for a different example, they had a good, not great deadline. But when you look at what the rest of the AL Central did, which I'll talk about, spoiler, I'll talk about my loser from there in a minute. They really won because they were light years ahead of the guys around them. In this case, Houston, it was a way better deadline than the Angels, but so what? You're competing with one team in that race, and you lost that day to the Mariners.
All right, fair enough. Mongo?
Yeah, I'm gonna stay right where I just said I'd stay. I'm gonna stay with the Twins, and it is simply because they just didn't do anything. You are a team hanging on to a playoff spot. You are third in, honestly, what I believe is a very winnable AL Central. I also believe the wild card's very approachable, and you just stay right where you are, especially on a team that is known for being top heavy and known for having injury-ridden stars. You're not at least in. What do we have? 500,000 trades this deadline? It felt like, and you want to get anything you wanted. There were trades just AAA dudes for AAA dudes. It was a wild deadline, and you're not at least going to go and try and hedge your bets by having better, by increasing your depth. For a team that seems to always be one guy short one way or another, whether it be that bat or whether their star gets injured or they just don't have that third pitcher, whatever it is, the Twins just one reliever brought in and that's it. And it's real. If I'm a Twins fan, even by Twin standards, this is a disappointment.
That's fair. You don't really, you want to see teams put in their best effort, especially when they are in the position to be contenders. So it is a bit disheartening that when that stuff happens, especially when you have such an explosive trade deadline. This feels like one of the most explosive we've seen in a long time. Time will tell. Maybe they get some buyouts or whatever they call it in baseball. We shall see.
Yeah, I'll be totally honest. 3 weeks ago, we had talked about wanting to do this show for a while, right? And we had talked about the All-Star game as a possible starting spot, the playoffs as a possible starting spot. And when this was on the radar 3-4 weeks ago, I was like, trade deadline could be a little dry. Sometimes it's a complete whiff, when you sent out the message Tuesday after the deadline, do we want to do this show? I almost punched through my phone to say yes. I mean, this was the best deadline in a really, really long time. John, this might be the best one, and you're a little younger than us. This might be the best one in your memory. I mean, you have to go way, way back to find funner ones than this. It was a bonanza. It was a bazaar. It was nuts. Read the room, Minnesota. Everybody was on the phone at all times. You brought in one dude who I even had to Google who it was, who I can't even particularly remember right now. It's absolutely insane. Trey, do something. So look at what the Phillies did. The Phillies literally, I mean, Austin Hayes was nice, but they literally just brought in reliever, sent out reliever, brought in reliever, sent out reliever. Now they brought in much safer relievers. I think they upgraded tremendously. But on paper, not a whole lot in terms of pluses and minuses, but you still upgraded your team tremendously because you literally just kept calling everybody. It's shocking that Minnesota couldn't do more or didn't want to do more either. I honestly, here's the worst part. I don't know which one's a bigger failure. If they come out later and go, well, we tried, or if they come out later and say we didn't try. I don't know which one's worse.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Well, John, do you have anything you want to add before we move on to the spice?
No.
All right. We got some spice here. So we have winners and losers that were contradictory to each other. And John had winners and that Mongo saw as losers. So we're going to talk about those. So let's kick it off with the Padres, I believe.
Let's do it. John, you can go first. What do you got for me here?
So I had the Padres as a winner before the Tanner Scott thing, but now I'm kind of falling off. But I'll still keep them as a winner. They bolstered the bullpen. They needed to. Everybody else except Robert Suarez has been roughly bad all year. Bringing in the best left-handed reliever in that entire deadline and bringing in Brian Hoeing as well will help their bullpen a little bit. It all comes down to their starting pitching. Yu Darvish is dealing with some family stuff right now. Nobody knows when he'll be back. Joe Musgrove has just not been pitching well all year. Michael King and Dylan Cease have looked amazing. Dylan Cease threw a no-hitter a little bit a couple weeks ago. Michael King has looked solid. He's had those blow-ups that kind of ruined him. But other than that, you don't have really that third starter. And you need that third starter. And if Yu Darvish has a blow-up, you could go to that bullpen and be safe and happy with keeping that 3-run lead or 3-run down or 2 runs down. Definitely doesn't know.
Now, Mongo, tell us why you think they're losers.
My problem with this deadline for the Padres is that everything that John said is 100% true. And that's the problem. If we were talking right now about the Diamondbacks or the Reds, or even to some extent like the Brewers, sign me up for this deadline. I'm all about this. The problem is here we are again with the San Diego Padres acting like this is MLB The Show, acting like this is fantasy baseball. They go out, they get the shiniest numbers, they get the highest O ranks, they put them on the team. But when you're an all-in World Series or bust team, yeah, you got nice arms, but anyone want to take a guess? How many playoff appearances does Tanner Scott have in his career? I'll give you a hint. It's exactly 1. Anyone want to take a guess on Jason Adam? I'll give you a hint again. It's exactly 1, and he hit a dude in that appearance. He's literally never gone into a playoff game and not hit a dude. On top of that, listen, I'm not here to talk politics. I'm not here to talk controversy. But if you remember, Jason Adam a couple years ago had that issue where he refused to wear a pride band in a Tampa Bay game. Now, Padres, it was for religious reasons. I get that, all that stuff. But San Diego, not exactly the least liberal place on earth. You sure he's going to succeed, socially here? I can't even guarantee you that. So when you're World Series or bust and you bring in 2 guys with exactly 2, appearances, 3 innings of playoff experience, are you really, doing what you set out to do? And then the last thing I'll say, this isn't the Padres' fault, but Robbie Snelling, he's the one who kind of makes this trade look a little more bearable for the Padres. High-end prospect originally fell off a little bit. Listen, guys, we've seen Miami do it time and time again. They fixed Jesus Luzardo pretty nicely before he got injured. They're known for being a little bit of a pitcher academy down there. You're only going to make yourself look stupider if one of these pitchers you sent down there develops. So, listen, if I'm the Padres, I'm scared sending Snelling down there. I don't know if I necessarily got the right arms, even if I got the shiniest arms. And again, I don't fully buy this specifically because it's the Padres.
All right. So let's move on to the other spicy part, the Baltimore Orioles. John, why don't you kick this off?
So I had the Orioles as a winner. So there was 3 trades, and then there was one that I felt like was a way too much of an overpay for the Orioles to do. So I liked what the Orioles got from the Phillies. They got Gregory Santos a little bit later into the deadline. I feel he'll fit fine into this bullpen. They needed bullpen. Their bullpen had like a 6 ERA coming into the deadline, and they got him. I feel like he'll be fine in a pitcher's ballpark now against righties. And they got Eloy, who has been solid in the past. Obviously, injuries are going to hurt him way too much. Again, a power hitter. The Orioles need it. They don't got many except Anthony Santander. This is a guy you could fit in when healthy, could be very good because there's a lot of protection around him, and they might need to pitch to Eloy. And then they got Trevor Rogers, and his first start got blew up by the Guardians. And it sucks now looking back at that trade because they gave up Connor Norby, and the very next day, or not next day, a couple days later, Jordan Westbrook gets hurt. And that was your second baseman right there. They gave up Kyle Stowers. They just keep replenishing with these outfielders. They have plenty. They have Heston Kjerstad, who is solid. I think that trade was not going to end up well anyways, and that's what I really thought about the Orioles.
This one I'm a little bit less invested in for a couple reasons. The first is I'm with you, John, and again, freaking Twins, when you make enough moves, there's bound to be some good in there, right? The Twins literally have one move that we can look back on and go either bad trade or it's still not enough, right? Here, there is some good to be had. I'll start with the Eloy one. My only concern with Eloy, they literally redid the stadium to make it 5 feet longer than Ryan Mountcastle's home run distance, right? They put that guy in doubles hell. And so it's not exactly the friendliest park to work out of, but Eloy can hit the ball to the moon. We know that. So he's pretty stadium proof. So if you're going to go out and get a slugger, getting one that's more of a true 3 outcomes guy, I think is the right guy to get. So I'm with you on that one. And the other reason I don't fault the Orioles as much is because, again, I think the Padres were more self-inflicted, just typical Padre greed, all in. The Orioles were desperate, right? 2 starting pitchers go down. Their closer from the beginning of the year goes down. They needed to replenish if they didn't want to waste this year. So I don't blame them as much. But with that being said, going out and getting Zach Eflin, who we know that anyone goes to Tampa Bay and magically gets better, you can't assume that he's completely fixed. You got to remember who he was before Tampa Bay, and you got to try and get a discount for a guy like that. I don't think they did. Rogers has been steadily on the decline since his rookie of the year. I think we're relying more on what he could be more than what he is. I'm with you, John. I think, to me, as soon as you trade away Connor Norby, I don't think you can be a winner. I love Connor Norby. And I think that's a bigger issue. And then those relievers, that's actually where I have my biggest problem here, these 2 relievers. First of all, go Google Phillies weaknesses, and you'll just get articles from the last 8 months about how they don't have enough bullpen help. If the team that needs bullpen help is casting their guys off to you, in a world where all you had to do was sneeze and someone would trade you a reliever, those are not the right bullpen guys. I can't stress that enough. Second of all, the back end of their bullpen's actually not too bad, right? Cano and Kimbo have their act together. You didn't have to go out and get guys who could necessarily close a game. You had to go out and find those fifth, sixth inning guys in short starts, especially if you're not sure if Eflin and Rogers are going to fit in with this team. So I don't think they were the right relievers. So again, right idea, and you were in a place of desperation for a team with World Series expectations. So I certainly give the attempt. The effort is there. I just think this was pretty atrocious execution of a plan. Good plan, bad acting.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. To wrap things up, I want to say that last year we were trashing Oakland. But this year we have a new team to trash.
Who is it?
None other than Chicago White Sox.
We're just picking on the weak links. I love it.
Boys, they I believe they set a record for their most losses earlier in the year, and then they promptly broke it again this year.
Yep.
So, boy, this team, if you just look back a couple of years ago, they looked so promising. They looked like they were on the cusp of turning the corner to becoming a contender that was going to be contending for a while, and then just the wheels fell right off. So what do the White Sox do now?
So the White Sox could have absolutely destroyed this deadline, like easily. But someone's manager, maybe he said it, maybe his manager said it, ruined the entire deadline for the White Sox. And Garrett Crochet not being traded kind of ruined it all. He came out and said, or his manager, it's not really out there who said it. He said he wants to be paid, and he only will pitch in the playoffs if he has a long length contract. Nobody was gonna do it, and it showed. It kind of ruined it. They didn't trade away Luis Robert. He needs to be out of the White Sox, and he'll be fine. They sold Paul DeYoung. But they only sold him because he had 18 home runs this year as a shortstop. They traded Michael Kopech earlier. They sold away again. Tommy Pham going to the Cardinals. Shocking. Eric Fetty just came back from the KBO. Sold. They sold some okay players who've had bad histories here or in the White Sox organization. They didn't trade away the players they should have. They could have gotten a good amount for Luis Robert Jr. They could have gotten a great package for Garrett Crochet. They just never did. What's next? Nobody has any idea what they should do next.
Yeah, I'll tell you what you shouldn't do. You shouldn't trade away, about 15% of your team and not get a prospect back who cracks your top 12 in a fairly weak farm system to begin with. This was a dumpster fire. I mean, listen, I like the return of Miguel Vargas in the three-way trade with the Dodgers, and that's kind of John's point here, which is there are some teams that are so loaded with talent that you probably forgot about, that you might have taken a flyer on in a fantasy league 2-3 years ago, that are just being thrown away. Again, just call the Braves. Can we get, one of your 20 young pitchers, who we've heard of before in dynasty circles for a relief pitcher, something of that nature. They could have got a ton of guys to just take flyers on. Instead, they took two guys who I've personally never heard of, John, to become prospects 13 and 14 in their farm system. I mean, what they shouldn't do is what they did. Shout out to John, by the way, here real quick. More credit where credit's due here. I was all in on Eric Fetty from the beginning this year. You made me pay for him in Dynasty by beating me to him. But it's Miles Mikolas all over again, right? Some of these guys are coming back from the KBO and really figuring it out. And bravo to the KBO for fixing some of these guys for us, because they're helping make the MLB fun again. And bravo to the White Sox for seeing that. But they weren't able to get Jimenez, to the level they could. They weren't able to get Moncada to the level he was. They've clearly broken, Robert's spirit at this point. That's the problem. They can't figure out that. I don't know if it's they're settling, if it's that they don't want to pay these guys, so they're not going to develop them. I don't know where the issue is, but the issue is they've taken some guys whose, ceiling is outer space and don't quite get them that high into the sky. You know, they're good players, but they haven't been able to turn the corner on any of these guys yet. And I don't really know what the answer is unless you become an all-out buyer. You know, as soon as you have a prospect that has any hype, go trade them for somebody who's, you know, a distinguished player. But then the problem is you got to figure out how to keep those guys long enough to do that enough times.
They could have done it. I heard a report saying that they could have gotten Jackson Holiday from the Orioles for Garrett Crochet. It was shocking to hear that because Jackson Holiday is arguably the best prospect in the.
Nope, we lost John.
Well, John's coming back in here. Oh, sorry, John. John, if you can hear me, just stop talking for a second. I'll just pick up the story because we all know where it's going. The Orioles have 1,000 batting prospects and could have moved one there for a pitcher. And the White Sox need a face of this franchise, right? Colson Montgomery is supposed to be the face of the franchise. He's good. I mean, he's supposed to be very good, but not Holiday good. You know, they don't have a true untouchable blue chip, you know, prospect. And this team needs to figure out a direction because honestly, even if Montgomery comes up, I mean, they'll be one of the many, many teams that has one cleanup hitter that's a waste.
That's fair. That's fair. Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up our first episode? No? All right.
Well, good here.
Thank you all so much for joining us here at 3 On Lights Out. We'll catch you next time. Remember, like, share, subscribe, comment down below what you thought of this trade deadline. See ya.